Hi everyone, welcome back to Canada Top to Bottom.
Hi, welcome back.
And a very snowy Kelowna. It snowed earlier this week. Took me 2 hours to shovel the drive. This could wear thin quite quickly, so I might be going shopping for a snowblower. But this is the first live news show that we're going to do. We're going to do on every second Sunday, bringing you all the latest news from Canadian immigration. We've got two main things to talk about today. First one is new immigration targets, and the second one is new classifications of knock codes. If you don't know what any of that means, don't worry, stay tuned. So you have the numbers on the immigration front.
I do. Just this week, the Canadian Immigration Department has, the Canadian government has released their new immigration targets. And this feels like this happens quite often, but they have got very, very bold, very ambitious immigration targets. And just as a little recap, in 2021, Canada admitted just over 400,000 new immigrants into the country. And yeah, so that was just last year. So 2022 not finished yet, but their target for this year was 430,000 new landed residents. So people who arrive here as permanent residents, as new immigrants, new permanent residents, not students, not temporary workers, not temporary residents, permanent residents. And the target for this year was 430,000 people. And so far, they claim that they are on track to reach this target of 430,000 new people. Now, 430,000 sounds quite high, but just this week, they have released the new targets for the next 3 years. So 2023, they are aiming to admit 465,000 new permanent residents. By 2024, 485,000. And yes, by 2025, by the end of the year 2025, Canada wants to admit 500,000 new permanent residents. So 500,000 new permanent residents. So that's just under 1.5 million new immigrants into Canada over the next 3 years. And why is this significant? Because Canada wants immigrants. Canada wants people to come. And this is mainly due to, you may have read this, it's been bandied around quite a lot. Canada has a very aging workforce and a very low birth rate. I don't know why that is, but there are a huge amount of people set to retire over the next 5 years, and Canada's birth rate doesn't keep up with its. It's not enough. There are not enough children being born into Canada to keep up with the workforce. Therefore, Canada needs immigrants,
especially young immigrants like us.
Exactly.
Very young.
Very young.
With our working lives ahead of us.
Exactly. So a couple of the, we'll link below to some of the places where you can look for if you want to look at this in more depth. But some of the takeaways from this are, they are looking at increasing regional programs, which I think is quite significant. If you're looking to move to Canada and perhaps you don't have enough points due to your education, your age, whatever it may be, if you don't have enough points to go through the standard express entry route, Canada is looking to increase their regional programs. So for example, provincial nominee programs, these are key. These are really, really key. If you don't have enough points to move to Canada through traditional express entry, provincial nominee programs could be amazing, because some of the provincial nominee programs, or PNPs as they're generally called, you can still apply to some of those up to the age of 55. Some of them, in fact, some of them don't even have an age limit. So you can continue to apply to those regardless of your age. Some of them you don't need an express entry profile. Some of them you don't need a job offer. There's all sorts. We have got a lot of videos on the provincial nominee programs. So yeah, so check those out.
Yeah, we have a full playlist of every provincial nominee program in Canada. And speaking,
yeah, so provincial nominee programs are definitely something worth looking into. Something which we didn't really understand when we were moving to Canada.
No,
we didn't know anything about PNPs.
And there's also things like the Atlantic Immigration Program and the Rural and Northern Program. We actually have some good friends of ours who moved here through the Rural and Northern Program. So those kind of, the Atlantic Immigration is kind of does what it says on the tin. It's the Atlantic provinces. And the Rural and Northern is, again, kind of what it says on the tin. But Vernon, which isn't too far from where we live here in Kelowna, is actually part of the Rural and Northern Program. And that's where our friends have moved through this program. So those kind of regional programs, as well as the PMPs, could be a really good option.
Yeah, and those ones in particular, the Atlantic Immigration Program and the Rural and Northern Immigration Program, so the RNIP, are traditionally areas of Canada in which immigration is low. So that more people move to larger places like Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, and fewer immigrants move to the Atlantic provinces and to rural parts of Canada, because there are fewer jobs and, you know, for obvious reasons. So those are the places that are going to be more targeted in these new immigration plans. And just to give you a few numbers, for 2023, they're looking to admit 465,000 new immigrants, 8,500 of which they hope to admit through the Atlantic Immigration Pilot. And another example is caregivers. They're really, really focusing on caregivers. Next year, they want to admit 8,500 caregivers through economic programs. And by 2025, they want to admit 14,750 caregivers. So if that is something you're interested in, is that something you could get some training in, get a qualification in, get some experience in? Caregivers are very hot in Canada right now. They are very much being targeted. And the final thing I'm going to mention is, because as we've mentioned on a few videos previously, in spring next year, spring 23, Canada is looking to do more specifically targeted draws, so that it's not just going to be people with the most points get selected. It's going to start becoming more targeted, and there's no information about what kind of targets those are going to be, what kind of targeted draws they're going to be. But we can predict that we think some of it will be based on occupation. So if you're in healthcare, if you're a tradesperson, that those kind of occupations are going to be targeted. But another very important thing we think is going to be targeted draws specifically aimed at people who are looking to move to places that are historically low in immigration. So the Atlantic provinces and the rural programs, but also French speakers, and not just French speakers in Quebec. Canada's specifically looking to get French speakers outside of Quebec. So that's our predictions. Those are our predictions for how they're going to hit these very high targets.
It's always a conundrum, right? Because if you move to a big city, there's more jobs. But that means that some places don't get the immigrants they need. And there are communities and smaller economies like Vernon, which is just north of us, like where's the other places that are in rural and northern? Red Deer, Grand Prairie.
I think there are 11 currently, but I think they're looking to expand the number of areas, the number of rural areas that are currently in this program to cover more rural parts of Canada to attract people to come there.
Yeah, I think if everyone just comes to Canada and moves to the big cities, it means that obviously the benefit of the immigration is only extended to the big cities. And it also means that these smaller economies can't kind of catch up, and the big cities remain kind of the only show in town. So I think it's an effort from the Canadian government to spread immigrants out more and get them away from maybe the biggest half dozen cities in Canada. Got a couple of comments actually. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Ahmad, sorry, you may correct my pronunciation. He said, agree, I'm 40 and just got my BC PMP approved.
Well done, you.
Yeah, waiting for the draw on November the 9th to apply for my PR. Congratulations. Can recommend life in BC very highly, apart from when you're shoveling your drive.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really, really great to hear that people, because many reasons, one of the main reasons why people can't get through express entry is because they are older than 30. Once you are 30 and older, your points start to drop. And people who are over 30 are often looking for different avenues. So it is wonderful to hear that through the BCPMP, you are age 40 and you've got in. That's brilliant. Well done.
Good job. And another question. I'm going to put our resident immigration expert on the spot here. Can older immigrate 48 years old get PR through being self-employed? What is the best route for that off the top of your head?
Oh gosh, you're putting me on the spot now.
All right. We'll come back to that one.
Yeah, you certainly can still immigrate age 48. There are, off the top of my head, I can't remember which one, but there's certainly one, maybe more, provincial nominee programs where you can immigrate at age 48 or older. A lot of them don't have a cap, but through a self-employed, there is a federal self-employed program. There is a federal self-employed program. You have to be self-employed. There are certain criteria which you should look up. You have to be self-employed for a certain amount of years. In particular, you have to have experience in particular fields. But certainly have a look at the federal self-employed program, and have a look at provincial nominee programs.
Sorry, put you on the spot there.
I need to do a bit of research.
And Ahmad says, by the way, Ahmad's in Kelowna.
Well, Ahmad, I hope you are enjoying the snow.
Yeah.
It's
probably should have just shouted your question. We probably would have heard you. It's a pretty small place. Thanks for getting in touch, though. Second thing we're going to talk about today are overhauls to the National Occupational Classification, the NOC code. So jobs in Canada, all jobs are classified according to their NOC code. And that's how the Canadian government and the immigration body determines what your occupation is and essentially determines its value. Every 10 years, they do a major overhaul and they completely restructure the NOC classifications, and it kind of reflects changes in the economy and the working environment. As everyone knows, the economy now is not how it was maybe 2 years ago, certainly not what it was 5 years ago. And as we've already discussed with immigration, they're trying to get immigrants to go to different places and stimulate different economies and different parts of different economies. So they change the NOC codes. So I'm going to read this actually, because when I tried to put it in my own words, I realized that the Canadian government had basically put it just fine. So they are going to overhaul the current 4-category NOC skill level structure by introducing a new 6-category system representing the level of training, education, experience, and responsibilities required for entry in an occupation. And training, education, experience, and responsibilities will from now on be known as TEER, T-E-E-R. And it adopts a 5-tiered hierarchical arrangement of occupational groups with successive levels of disaggregation, containing broad occupational categories, major groups, sub-major groups, minor groups, and unit groups. Actually, with hindsight, I probably could have put that in a slightly simpler.
could have simplified that slightly. Basically, at the moment, your job, anyone's job, is classified into 0, which is managerial positions, or skill level A, B, C, or D, which is basically, an overarching rundown is A is if you're in skill category A, you have a profession which requires a university degree, in a broad speaking sense. B, NOC code B, is a category where you need specific training and maybe like an apprenticeship or something like that. And then C and D are generally unskilled, where you can have training on the job or where there's no training required at all. Anybody can do it. So it goes down from managerial levels, university requires training, such as an apprenticeship, things like that, or C and D, which are training on the job. So that's going to be changed. They're not going to use those 0, A, B, C, or D anymore. They're going to change it to TIER, which, as Charlie just said, stands for represents the level of training, education, experience, and responsibilities. TEER. Because the way you can't just say I am an accountant. That's not something that you can just put on your permanent residence application. What they'll look at is, when you are working as an accountant, what are your duties? What do you actually do? Do you do this? Do you do this? If you fulfill all of these duties, then you are in this particular NOC code. If you say, I am a sales representative, I am a social worker, they could be quite broad categories. So what the Canadian government do is classify them into, okay, you're a social worker. When you do that work, what are your actual duties? What do you do? If you fulfill the correct amount of duties on this list in the category of social worker, then we'll put you into this category. But they're changing that, which does actually make sense. So you're going to be kind of assessed on your level of training, your level of education, your experience, and the responsibilities you fulfill in that job.
Seems logical enough. So there we go. There's two big bits of news. Firstly, even more immigrants coming to Canada, and secondly, changes to the NOT code. We've got links in the description box below about the changes to the NOT code, and we'll try and find some official numbers regarding the changes to the immigration targets as well. So thank you very much for joining us on this here in BC, damp, cold Sunday night. And we will see you on Wednesday when hopefully we'll be reporting on an express entry draw. And we might do that live as well. I quite like the live thing.
Yeah,
Too stressful?
No.
Okay, good.
Like
we'll do it live.
It's nice to know that people are joining us live.
Yeah,
nice
exactly.
to know that you're there.
All right, we'll do it live on Wednesday. There we go. It's nice to have a challenge. So thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you Wednesday.